Recently I removed the transmission from my 4Runner because it was making a crazy grinding noise in 4th gear, kinda like this.
Obviously something's wrong with this thing's transmission.
Today, I plan to tear the transmission apart and figure out what's going on with it. At the very least, I'll know if this thing is salvageable or if I need to buy a new transmission. But before I start tearing it apart, I need to clean it up. So I'm gonna spray some solvent on this thing and get to pressure washing. Alright, so I just got done cleaning the transmission and I think I could have got it a little bit cleaner, but I'm happy with how it turned out. It's a lot cleaner than it was when I started. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the bell housing and the transfer case just to make this thing a little bit easier to work on, and then I'm going to take it into the garage. So this bottom bolt right here was kind of giving me some trouble, almost rounded it off. I was using a 12-point socket, switched to a 6-point, and was able to save the bolt and possibly save the day, because it wouldn't be fun to get this thing off out of here. So with all of the bell housing bolts loose, now I'm going to take off the throwout bearing and the shift fork, and then take all the bolts out and then pop off this bell housing. Alright, with the bell housing off and that thing came off really easily, now I can move over to the transfer case. So there's just a bunch of 14mm bolts that are holding the transfer case on, and then we should be able to pop that off. When I'm taking this off, I'm making sure that I keep all the bolts in order so I know where they go when I put it back together. With the bell housing, all of the bolts were the same length, so it's really easy. Just toss them in any order. But with this one, if I recall, on my crawler when I was installing the dual cases, not all of them are the same length. So I'm going to make sure that I get them in the right layout when I reinstall the transfer case. But I have been wrong before, so there is a chance that when I take this apart, all the bolts are the same length, and you can disregard everything that I just said. Well, as you can see, all of the bolts are the same length. I just put them in the same layout that they were bolted into the transfer case. So these are the top bolts, these are the second row bolts, I guess, and these are the bottom bolts. And what this means is that the bolts in my crawler were just mismatched from the previous owner. So when you're taking yours apart, obviously you don't really have to worry too much about where you put these bolts. As you can see, they're all the same length. But what I am gonna do is I'm gonna bag and tag these. So I'm gonna put these in a bag that say transfer case, and I'm gonna put these in a bag that say bell housing, just so I don't get them mixed up in the future. With the transmission in the garage, now it's time to venture into the unknown. As I've mentioned before, I've never rebuilt the transmission, so I'm kind of just diving into this head first and learning as I go. It looks to me like the cases are held together with all of these 14mm bolts right here, so I'm going to start by taking those off. And I also know that under the shifter housing there's a rail that has a guide on it, and that guide has to come off too. So I'm going to start by removing those two things and then trying to work these cases apart. So this is interesting because I've done this before. These little spacers right here, there's washers in the gasket and they're really easy to lose, and there's two missing. So if the two are missing, where could they have gone? Perhaps they fell into the transmission. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If I move the gasket up, you see the washer comes out. Now I know this because I've done it before. So this is something that definitely could have happened. We could have lost a washer into the transmission this way and grenaded the transmission. Who knows? Well, that theory's been debunked. The washers were actually just stuck to the underside of the shifter housing. Alright, that should be all of them. I got all the bolts out that hold the cases together, and I'm gonna work on taking this side off. I have a bunch of towels under here and shirts and stuff to catch all the gear oil, and hopefully I don't make too big of a mess. But I think if I hit this with a mallet and just start forcing it this way, it should just slide off. Oh yeah, we got a bunch. Yeah, I mean, it's coming apart. Hopefully nothing falls off of this, or it falls from the inside of this case when I take it out. Jesus, this is terrifying. All right, so I got the cases split apart and I started cleaning the inside of this case over here, and it's all metal, so things aren't looking good so far. I'm looking at the gears here and I don't see anything that just obviously stands out as broken or shredded. All the gears look to be in pretty good condition, honestly, so I think the issue is gonna lie in the other case half. So I'm gonna pull off this bearing retainer and then start working on removing the snap rings and getting this side off. That's not good. So I don't know what's going on here, but it looks like some metal was chewed up and it spit out a little metal shaving around this shaft here. Oh my God, look down here. There's even more. So we got a bunch of this in here. And as you saw, when I took off that bearing retainer, it had a bunch of metal shavings in it too. So that's not good. Are we leaking everywhere? I think it just came off. All right, there it is.
Tail housing off, that this got out of the neutral position. You may want to put them back in the neutral position.
So I got the cases split, and for the last 30 to 45 minutes or so, I've just been watching YouTube and looking at parts diagrams, trying to get an understanding of what I'm looking at here. So as I've mentioned before, I have not rebuilt a transmission in the past, so this could be very incorrect, but I'm pretty sure 5th and reverse are on this side and 1 through 4 are on this side. Now I'm pretty sure that this is the shift rod for the 3rd and 4th gear set, and what I noticed was the actual bearing on the input shaft is toasted. Look at this. So we've definitely found one problem, but this is all that I've found with the transmission. When I'm looking at these gears, they don't look to be, you know, chewed up or anything to me. These little grooves in there are supposed to be there. Those are little oil grooves from my Googling. That's what I've been reading. And I'm looking at all these gears and I don't see anything that looks like it needs to be replaced. So I guess my question to you guys is, can the input shaft bearing being bad cause the grinding sound that you hear right now? If that's the case, that would be absolutely awesome, because then I would only have to replace the bearings instead of a bunch of other parts in this transmission. And if I'm right about this being the 3rd and 4th gear set, is it possible that just the bad bearing can cause that grinding noise? If it is, and all I have to do is replace that, that's so much easier than tearing the entire thing apart and replacing everything. So at this point, I'm just gonna leave it as is. I'm gonna listen to you guys in the comments and kind of learn more about the transmission and understand what I have to replace. And hey, if it is something as simple as this, that's awesome. We'll just replace the bearing and put it back together. All right, guys, that's gonna be it for this video. Thank you for following along as I tore apart this transmission and learned along the way. If you enjoyed this content, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And also, any and all comments and suggestions having to do with what might be wrong with this transmission are greatly appreciated. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Later.
Here we go, at the top of the class on a roll, and it's time to run it up, yeah, you know, maxed out, put the pedal to the floor.